Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Benjamin. Welcome to my book club. And today I want to talk about a book from a genre I really never thought I was going to read. Today I read a romance book. Look, I'm probably pretty close to your stereotypical mid-30s married white male, so a romance book is pretty far outside of my spectrum, but I am taking part in Reddit's r/fantasy subreddit bingo competition. This is the board where there are 25 different reading prompts, and the idea is to read a book from each of them to force yourself to read things you might otherwise not have. One of these prompts is romantasy. The hard mode for that prompt is that it has to be an LGBTQ friendly sort of romantic coupling in the book. Romance is not something I've ever read. My wife reads romance and she loves it. I have often found myself enjoying the romantic stuff in some books. I've liked some partnerings in some of the books that I've read, but if it were not for this square, I would never have read a romance book. And if I'm a little bit honest, I'm still not sure I actually have. Today's book is Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. Ocean's Echo is a sort of sci-fi political thriller couched around a romance story between two men who couldn't be more different. On one side of things we have Tennille. He is the nephew of the leading politician of this society. He has always been a party boy, a flirt. He sleeps around. He is the black sheep of the family. He is currently, at the start of the book, hiding from his family, disappeared off to gambling dens and parties and boozing. And on the other side of the story we have Surratt, who, born in the provinces, has grown up with the military as the core of his being. He's the lieutenant in one of the divisions of the military. In a society where the military invades everything. Sports teams are sponsored by the military. Debate clubs are sponsored by the military. Different businesses have their different allegiances from different divisions of the military. It is the different divisions of the military that kind of run things, despite the nominal civilian infrastructure and government. Through the use of ancient alien artifacts, the people of this group of planets, of this planetary sector, have developed some mutations that give people some interesting mind abilities. Namely, there are two kinds. The first of which, and the most widely used and recognized, are the architects. The architects are able to plant compulsions within people. They're able to essentially, mind control people somewhat. The caveat being, you're being mind controlled, an architect has done it to you, and it is technically illegal to do this without someone's consent. On the flip side, we have readers. Readers can, in essence, read your mind. It's a little bit more complicated. They can sort of surface level read your emotions, but they can go deeper and read some deeper thoughts and some deeper currents within your mind. And in this society, readers are untrusted. No one likes the idea that readers could be reading your mind, and no one likes the idea that readers could be out and about. The main use found for readers is that they are very good at navigating chaotic space, the area of a space with spatial distortions and whatnot that make traveling between planetary systems possible, but also very dangerous. To keep the readers in control, the military sets them up in what is called syncs. Syncs are where an architect and a reader mind meld, essentially, and in this way the reader can no longer defend against the architect's mind control powers, and the architect has full control over the reader whenever they want them. And this is supposed to keep the reader in line and allow the reader and architect pair to be a really good, strong piloting force. In our actual story itself, that's all background, we have Tennille, our flirt character, along with our straight-laced, follow-the-rules at all costs Surratt. And, it's a romance novel. I'm not giving you any spoilers to say that clearly this is the relationship at play. And so they are very opposites. They are clued together to start a sync. Surratt doesn't think it's right, Tennille doesn't want it, and so they pretend that they've synced. So we have sort of a fake dating, but it's like a fake mind control trope. And along the lines, they deal with some military stuff, they deal with an attempted coup, and the political ramifications all around that. Now, that was a mouthful. Sorry, I'm not used to recapping romance stuff and I didn't know what to cut out. So, what did I like? I really liked the sort of political thriller aspect of this story. The story here as much as I was expecting the story to be about romance, the story here really is about this sort of military coup and fighting against it, fighting for it, the players within there, the different characters on different sides and the different factions, and exploring not only how this coup affects this planetary system, but how this coup might affect this planetary system's place in the wider universe. And that was all really well done. That was really captivating and enjoyable. For the most part, and this surprised me, I really enjoyed the romance stuff. I felt that the characters were really well suited to each other after we got past that first kind of, getting to know each other stage. The book does have a lot of misunderstandings and, the sort of thing where one character thinks that the other person is thinking something and that becomes the plot point for a little while, and that sort of stuff does annoy me, but I think that is what romance books are about. And I also love the reader-architect mind control powers sort of dichotomy at play here. They are super interesting. I would love to read more stuff about architects and readers, especially ones in a more normal sync situation. I think just reading a straight sci-fi book about an artifact, about an architect and reader synced pair piloting some missions would be actually super interesting. The prose is wonderful, the plotting is mostly very good, but I do have to talk about a few things where I had some issues. Firstly, this is a book about mind control, and it's a romance book, and I was expecting a lot of talk about consent here, and it definitely is some of that here, and the book comes down very firmly on the side that consent is good, which, yes, obviously that is the side you want to take, and is the correct side. But I thought there would be more exploration of the idea of consent at like a larger scale, consent from all the readers in the stories. I thought there'd be more of a consent like explored in the romance as well. I'm not saying that that's not there, I'm just saying it's not as deep and explored and well thought out as I wanted to, but that's, I suppose it's not what the book was trying to do, so that's fine. Another thing, I did quite like the characters. I particularly liked Surratt, his sort of, the characters are both rather tropey, but Surratt's, upholding the rules against all odds, doing what is right, and then having to face the fact that what is right and the rules of the organization he's in don't always align, and the friction point where those two clash. His was by far the most interesting chapters to me. Tennel I found a bit more generic playboy-y, a little bit more two-dimensional than Surratt, but I still liked him. The background characters, like the crew and whatnot, are actually some of my favorite characters in the book, and lead into one of my biggest complaints, which is the book as a whole feels super torn between romance and sci-fi. I think that the romance sections are kind of holding the sci-fi sections back a little bit, and the sci-fi sections are holding the romance sections back a little bit. The book feels like it's trying to be both of these genres, while just kind of stepping back a bit from both of them. I think the book would be better placed if it had focused more on one or the other. Either way, I came away from this book with the shocking realization that I wished there was more romance in it. The romance plot in this book is, when it's there, I really quite enjoyed it, but it never got to the level I was hoping for. It never got the resolution or the finales that would make me satisfied. It never felt like the romance was the core concept of the book, which it's listed as a romance book wherever I look at it, but I feel like I've read other just pure sci-fi books that have had more romance in them than this one. And on the same line, I feel like the sci-fi stuff here is super cool. Architects, readers, the alien remnants, chaotic space, the characters in the crew of Retrieval 2 are fantastic. And if we'd spent some time maybe focusing on them more than just our two main romantic leads, then maybe that also would have turned into a little bit more of an enjoyable read. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed this book. I just feel like there's two different books here that it could have been, and I think I would have enjoyed either of those a little bit more. Overall, I'm torn, because I did enjoy reading this. This book is probably like a 7 out of 10, and I am counting it from my Romantasy square on my bingo board. But I went into this being like, I'm going to read a romance book. And while I had my trepidations about that, I was like, cool, I've never read that before. That'll really open my eyes and I'll see this whole new genre that I've never read before. But I don't feel like I read a romance book. I feel like I read a sci-fi book with a romance in it. And not a huge romance portion in that. So I'm almost tempted to try and find another romance book. But I know I did ask people for suggestions for romance books that aren't super heavy on the romance. So I did bring this entirely on myself. But as I said, Ocean's Echo by Verena Maxwell is getting a 7 out of 10. It is getting a recommendation, even if you are just a pure sci-fi reader. I thought it was a really good sci-fi political thriller. I just wish it was fleshed out a little bit more in either direction. So there you have it. That is my first romance book read. I genuinely think I might check out Everina Maxwell's other book, Winter's Orbit, which is set in the same universe but has none of the same characters or setting, and I believe has completely different tropes. I'm not sure how connected they are at all, whether it is the same planetary sector or just like the same universe. So it may or may not have the architect reader thing that I'm really interested in, but I'm sure it'll have something else that's really interesting. I think Everina Maxwell's a fantastic author. I really enjoyed this book despite the issues I had with it. So there you go. Do you guys have any other suggestions for maybe slightly heavier romance in sci-fi books? I know there's a lot of fantasy books for it, but I'm really more interested in the sci-fi side. So there you go. If anyone else read this, has anyone else read a lot of romance books? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to pick up a copy of the book, there is a link in the description below, along with all my socials and my Amazon wishlist. But most of all, just remember to keep reading.